I'm sick and tired of paying dues, baby.
Do you feel that? Oh shit. Oh, wah, ah, ah, ah. Oh, wah, ah, ah, ah. Get up, come on, get down with the sickness. Get up, come on, get down with the sickness. Get up, come on, get down with the sickness. Open up your head and let it flow into me. Get up, come on, get down with the sickness. You mother, get up, come on, get down with the sickness. You fucker, get up, come on, get down with the sickness. Madness is the gift that has been given to me. I can see inside you the sickness is rising. It seems that all that was good has died. Oh no, the world is a scary place. Now that you've woken up the demon in me. Bobby, will you give it to me? 2, 3, 4. Oh. Get up, come on, get down with the sickness. You mother, get up, come on, get down with the sickness. You fucker, get up, come on, get down with the dickness. Open up your hate and let it flow into me. Why can't you just fuck up and die? Get down with the sickness. Fuck you, I don't need this shit. I'm down with the sickness. You stupid, sadistic, abusive fucking organ. Down with the sickness. Here it comes. Get ready to die. Get ready to die.
Richard Cheese, Lounge Against the Machine, Jimmy Kimmel, Adam Carolla. Welcome back to
The
Last
ladies
Call.
go nuts for this.
Well, you can tell by the way I use my walk, I'm a woman's man. No time to talk. The music loud, women warm, being kicked around since I was born. Never tolerate, I don't hate, and you may look the other way, but we can try to understand and do your time to make no man. Whether you're a brother or whether you're a mother, you're staying alive, staying alive. Feel the city breaking and everybody shaking, and you're staying alive, staying alive. Staying alive, staying alive. Staying
You can't touch this. You can't touch this. You can't touch this. You can't touch this. My music hits me so hard, makes me say, oh my Lord, thank you for blessing me. What am I to rhyme and too hype? It feels good when you know you're down. A super dope homeboy from the Oak Town, and I'm known as such. And this is a beat you can't touch. I told you, homeboy, you can't touch this. Yeah, that's how we living, and you know you can't touch this. Look in my eyes, man, you can't touch this. Yo, let me bust the funky lyrics. Fresh new kicks and bands, you got it like that. Now you know you wanna dance, so move out of your seat and get a fire girl and catch this beat while it's rolling. Hold on, pump a little bit and let the noise go on like that, like that. Hold on a minute, just don't fall on back. Let them know that you're too much, and this is a beat touch. Yo, I told you can't touch this. Why you standing there, man? You can't touch this. Yo, sound the bell. School is in, sucker. You can't touch this. Give me a song or rhythm, making them sweat. That's what I'm giving them now. They know. You talk about the hammer, you're talking about a show that's hyped and tight. Singles are sweating so fast, them a whiteboard tape. To learn what's it gonna take in the 90s to run the charts. Legit. Either work hard or you might as well quit. That's word because you know you can't touch this. You can't touch this. Break it down. Stop. Hammer time. Go with the flow. It is said if you can't groove the list, then you probably are dead. So wave your hands in the air. Bust a few moves. Run your fingers through your hair. This is it. For a winner, dance to this, and you're gonna get there. The move. Slide your rump. Just for a minute, let's all do the bump. Bump, bump, bump. Yeah. You can't touch this. Look, man. You can't touch this. You better get hype, boy, because you know you can't touch this. Ring the bell. School's back in. Break it down. Stop. Hammer time. You can't touch this. You can't touch this.
This storm is coming like a ghost town. All the clubs are being closed down. This place is coming like a ghost town. Bands won't play no more. Too much fighting on the dance floor. This storm is coming like a ghost storm. Why must the youth fight against themselves? Government leaving the youths on the shelf. This place is coming like a ghost town. No job to be found in this country. Can't go on no more. The people getting hungry.
Good evening, everyone. This is Dustin from Stonewolf Studios coming at you to give you another Chamsys quick tutorial and a little bit of a play session tonight. Tonight, we want to actually build on what we did the last time, which was about 2 weeks ago, and that's expand our ideas. We went ahead and were able to patch a laser, get a laser up and running, and get Chamsys up and running, and be ready to program cues. Hopefully, if you enjoyed it, you had some time to play around with it, make some cues on your own in the visualizer. If you didn't, no big deal. We'll jump back into what we were doing. So what we want to talk about tonight is what to do in live events. Like Chamsys, the way that we set it up is really well suited to doing individual cue stacks, like for dance groups or for theater productions. But a lot of people swear by Chamsys for live productions and live music and live entertainment. Uh, Me included. I personally, if I can't have a Chamsys desk, it's not going to be a happy day for me, just because I'm faster on it. And for live music, it has a lot of tools that are really, really powerful, that are really, really quick to set up and get moving on the fly. If you're not familiar with live music and live entertainment and live mixing of shows, it's a technique that's called busking, live busking. So it's something that we definitely need to dig into. So let's go ahead and flip into Chamsys here real quick and take a look at what we're doing. Last time we patched a single laser that had 6 builders in it, so that's 6 individual heads. We want to grow that. I know that my laser rig that I set up, and that's going to be for this pretend show that we're doing, has 7 lasers in it. It is a laser show design borrowed from my good friends that run the Salim laser enthusiast meetup at the end of the summer. If you haven't ever been to it and you want to get into lasers, it's a great time, great people, and you get to learn a lot. So I'm going to actually use their rig, which I know has 7 lasers in it. What we want to do is actually, let's take a look real quick at our group page here. Something I didn't actually point out last time, but it's something that we should be aware of. If you look in the group palettes here, you'll see on the top left, there's a G number, which is your group number. And on the top right, there's this other number here. With Mercury Basic, it says 6, and then All Basic 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 has a 1s in it. What I did before we actually started this tonight is I went ahead and took a couple minutes to create something that you should do, especially if you're using Mercury heads, is take a moment when you patch your first laser to build a group for each individual builder in it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll show you why that's important here. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually talk about an idea that if you get into a music festival, a lot of times you actually have to do, which is called cloning heads or copying heads. Chamsys makes this really, really easy because they give you tools that take all of the entire programming that you've created for any individual head, and you can copy it to another head instantaneously, and everything's there. So what we're going to do is go ahead and go into patch. Remember last time we went ahead and patched a single laser here. So what I'm going to do is highlight everything here. We're going to hit copy, and then we're actually going, it says select destination on the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and just hit copy again. Let me flip real quick so you can actually see this. It does give you a menu here that asks if you want to clone the heads, including programming. Are you sure? We're going to say yes. So that gives us 2 lasers in here. All right. So that gives us now 2 of our lasers. Something you'll notice though is it actually doesn't, when you repatch a head like this or do the copying, it drops the address into the next contiguous address that's available. We don't want that because, as we talked about last time, I like each of my lasers to be on their own individual universe just for data organization's sake. So what I'm going to do is actually just highlight all of those fields here, and we're going to do 2-1 because I just know that it's going to want to patch to that, and it will go ahead and patch everything for you in the background. No need to worry. Something else that I want to do here and point out is head numbers. Notice that it actually dropped this to the next available head number, which is 17. Remember, we want to be able to keep track of our heads a little bit more easy. So I make all of my master heads on the tens digits, so 10, 20, 30, 40, and then all of the heads fall in after that as 11, 12, 13, or 21, 22, 23, so on and so forth. So we're going to go ahead and highlight that and just hit 20, boom. and that gives us everything here. Now, remember, we did talk about last time taking a few moments when you're setting up a show to go ahead and fill in the name columns. I'm going to actually skip that step for this demo just because I don't want you to have to sit here for me to rename 70 things that you could probably do on your own in a heartbeat. What I am going to do, though, is keep on copying these heads. So now we have 2 lasers. I'm going to actually highlight all of those, hit copy, copy again, and yes, I want to clone it. So now we have 4, and then I'm going to highlight the next 3 lasers. Here, bam, there we go, and copy one more time, bam. So that gives us all of our 7 lasers in here. Now, why I did that this way, let's go back into the group page. Now, if you take a look at the group palettes here, all of the numbers have changed. So this number is how many units are actually included in that group, which is really, really handy because now we can see I have all 7 basic builders. You'll notice up top here, everything's a little bit out of order. We can fix that later. Basically, you can go back and fix the groups and fix the selection order at a later time. Right now, we just wanted to be able to quickly copy data and get it moving. Say that we had a whole show programmed and we need, all of a sudden, we have 30 more lasers. Well, let's just copy it across and make it a little bit easier for everybody. So we have that going on, and we're all good. So now we have our entire 7 lasers. I went ahead and pre-patched and pre-built an accelerate file here for this entire rig. And in fact, you'll actually notice that I have gas 1 and gas 2. This is for the Salim rig, the place that I go at the end of the summer. And I actually had the opportunity last summer to be able to apply the X-Laser Mercury control system to old school gas lasers, which was a lot of fun because you get some really, really unique colors out of them, and they look very different than diode lasers. But coming back to what the important bits, let's come back over here to Chamsys. And I want to fix our patch real quick because remember when we did this, all of a sudden it started just dropping things in what it thinks the next contiguous address is. And I've noticed when I've been doing, I goofed up. Huh. Okay, so we're going to be missing some master heads because I am a goofball. I'm going to actually go in here and fix what I just goofed up. We're going to remove all of these heads, which is something that we haven't talked about, which is the remove key over here down on the right. And we're going to get rid of all of those. And then I'm going to do the proper thing and highlight all of the heads and drop them where we need them. And then we'll do that. We're going to highlight all 4. And what I'm going to do is copy. And then I'm actually just going to delete the last one because I know that that's not actually useful to us because that's actually 8 lasers and I only have 7 in my virtual rig. All right. Then we're going to something that's you need to actually. It's really handy to know in Chamsys. Changing head numbers, unlike other desks, changing head numbers and moving them around and reorganizing them is incredibly easy, and all of your programming always follows where the head numbers are. This is really handy for my friends that actually work in the dance world and have to convert data all the time for from one person's rep to another. Is what you can do is actually import in your ASCII file whatever the default channeling is, and all of that programming will show up in Chamsys, and then you can rearrange the head numbers however you like them in your desk and save yourself a heck of a lot of time. Real quick though, I am going to reorganize just a little bit. That's going to be 70. That's going to be 60. And I'm actually doing these backwards because it just starts to move the data around a little farther than I want to some of the time when we're dealing with high numbers of units. All right, 40 and all right, and 30. There we go. One thing I do want to do is also fix all of these all of this addressing. So we're going to 3-1, and it's going to say, hey, we have something else programmed here. Oops, I'm going to actually, what we're going to do real quick. I'm going to actually show you something that's going to be handy in your life later. Highlight everything, and if you want to unpatch your desk, you can either type U for unpatch or 0, and it'll clear out all of your patching. Really, really handy when you need to move in a hurry. All right, so we're going to do 3-1, 4-1. Now, something I could be doing to save myself a little bit of time is we could do patched offsets in here, and that if you is basically when you go to patch and do your whatever address at whatever, you can specify in addition to universe1 dash address 1, then you can set /50 and it will offset each new item by 50 addresses. Really handy, real quick time saver. I'm just a creature of habit and tend to do everything like this. Now, the beautiful part about when we did all this copying of programming, yes, it updated our groups for us, but it also then in turn updated all of our builder stacks that we had a lot. So it in the main view here, if we actually took a view at the queue, you'll see that it actually copied in all of the new headmasters into that. And same with the test builder is it grabbed all of the basic ones all in order now and added those to that queue so that we have those up and running. Okay, so let's go ahead and clear that out. We're going to drop out. So last time when we were talking, we basically made the lasers go, and we didn't do much else with them other and because we unfortunately got cut off because of an internet connection, and I do apologize. Our internet connection has been acting up a little bit. It may drop out on me. I will try to come back if that does happen. So real quick, we want to talk about how to organize data flow for busking, because when you're doing live shows, you need to have as many tools at your fingertips as you possibly can, um, and as quick as you can, because sometimes you get in situations like if you're at a show with a band and you have busking, what you can do is actually set up different pages of playback faders on the desk, one for each song, and then you can have a bunch of different busking tools that are dedicated to each track just on a single page. Or if you get into instances like I do often with corporate events and that sort of thing, I tend to only have to limit myself to one page of faders, so I need to be highly, highly efficient because on the Chamsys desk, when I'm on my MQ80, which is my smaller desk, I only have 10 faders to play with. So when you only have 10 faders and you came from an old school theater background like I did, where busking originally was just bumping hitting a bunch of buttons as though you're playing a piano, or running single faders that do single things up and down, this you have a little more flexibility. You need to be a little more judicious about what attributes you play on each fader, put on each fader. Something. Let me also preface anything that we talk about for the rest of the evening. This is purely just my method. There is 101 ways to do what we're doing tonight. Everybody has their own method, and what I hope everybody does is takes what I teach you tonight, make it your own, find new ways to do things, new cool stuff to do, and let me know, because I like learning. I like learning new things, and then I like to help share that knowledge as well. All right, so let's get back to Chamsys here. When we were in the old school, like I had mentioned, hitting bump buttons and that sort of thing, you can still do that in Chamsys here. It's just a really inefficient way to do things because at this point you're using each playback, which are really, really valuable, to do just one thing. And you want to actually try to make those playbacks do more than one thing if you can. So there's different ways to go about it. A lot of folks, when they get into busking situations, divide their Q stacks into functions, which means that you'll have one Q stack or one fader that'll probably control your intensity. If you're working a corporate event, you'll generally this Q stack will be your quote room look, so that'll be something that you need to divert from, but your console always comes back to. And like I said, it's just intensity. Then for the fun stuff, what you'll do is create a stack that has different colors on it. And so you'll have a stack that is just color combinations, but no other data. Then you'll have a stack for gobos, a stack for positions, and a stack for effects. Chamsys lets you take that a little further, and you can create a couple other types of faders that I find really, really handy, which are called size masters and speed masters. So let's go ahead and walk through a little bit of creating some of these things. Chamsys gives us some really handy tools to make this actually go a lot faster. So what I'm going to do right now is go ahead and hit Mercury Basic, all the basics, and we're going to hit locate like we've done before, and that'll actually take us to all of our default values. What I'm going to do though, let's go into color. Now, when you patch any unit in Chamsys, it has a bunch of palettes already built into that head file that were defined by the manufacturer or by Chamsys based on a DMX chart, those sorts of things. But in every single unit, you will find the 10 basic colors, which are red, amber, yellow, green, cyan, blue, UV, which is like purple, pink, magenta, and white. I also add, I actually usually add an 11th color, which is black. And there's a reason for that is so that you can have intensities going, but then you can drop black colors in, which become a subtractive mix in your effects. I will get that at a later time because that's kind of an advanced concept. Let's talk about the easy stuff here. With these 10 color palettes that are already built for this, we're going to go ahead and highlight them. And then we're going to hit copy, and it's going to say select destination, and I'm going to hit playback. 3 is going to be my colors, and I'm going to hit like that. What Chamsys does is creates a cube based on each of those palettes that will turn our lasers or lights into those colors, but in the default fade times. Really, really handy. You can also do this with position. We have our 6 or 8 basic positions. We're going to copy those, bam, and drop that onto playback 4. It gives us all of our position data. And then you can do that with beam as well. And if you want to get fancy, you can also do that with effects. This is something we didn't talk about a whole heck of a lot last time, which is when you create effects, it's actually really, really good habit to record the effect as an effect palette so you can come back to it and adjust it, not in a queue later. That also gives you the advantage of being able to do these palette copies and make really, really quick effect stacks. Really handy, something we'll touch upon a little bit later, probably once we get a little deeper into effects. Real quick, what I'd like to do though is get you to give me one split sec. There we go, and let's go into our live laser here real quick. So what I want to do is I'm going to grab all the Mercury Basic builders, and I'm going to hit locate. You can see over here in the upper left hand side of my screen is a view from capture that has all of the lasers, and then the live laser view in the center, that's actually the laser that's sitting on my desk. We're going to focus on the live laser for just a moment here to show some things. Now remember, we did some fanning last time. We want to do the same sort of fanning, but we want to get a little more advanced because we're in capture and we have all of these lasers in capture. We need to worry about how our fans are actually working, because if we try a fan right now with position, what tends to happen is everything will move in a predictable pattern, but it won't move as fast as we want because this is one big spread and it's spreading the movement over all of the heads. What we actually want to do is we're going to take this back into locate. We're going to hold down fan. Let me give you a full screen here. We're going to hold down fan, and it gives you this bar here, which is the fan type bar. This is really, really, really handy. You have asymmetric fan, which is a default type of fan that starts from the middle, moves out. You have symmetric, which creates a mirror image across the fan, and then you have point to point, which is your end. You also then have groups and segments. These work just like the effects groups and segments do in the effect engine. So that's two different ways to think about how you're dividing things up. I want to spread this fan into 6 parts because I have 6 builders per laser. So what I'm going to do, since it says N parts, is I'm going to type 6, hold down fan, and hit N parts. That's going to put me into 6 fan selection. So when I do that locate and we look here, let me move this out of the way a little bit, and we go ahead and into our fan, then we notice that the fans actually respond a little more evenly across everything here, so that it's a little more even, and we can work like that and see what's going on. Okay. What I want to do right now, I'm going to say that this is my first cue that I want to record in the show, and I know that I'm going to use this as a basis for a lot of things. So let's go ahead and hit record and drop that onto a playback so that when I want to, I can just bring this up, and we have a lovely fanned look that we can start to play with. I'm going to give you Great. All right. So we have that. Now, if we start to apply our color handle, you'll see that we can actually start to tap through some colors here and go through each of our color palettes that we created. Sometimes you will have to tweak the color palettes out just a little bit to make them appear a little better in real life to what you want them to be. Capture does have a little bit of limitation on how, if you can see actually in here, how it presents the colors when they're really, really saturated. It's not a bad thing. It's just purely, it's a lot of data for it to process. All right, so we're going to be in orange here. So the next thing we want to do, I'm going to actually come back to our live laser so we can just take a look at these dots here. The next thing we want to do of our handles is, since we've created positions, we've created a basic look that we want to be able to diverge from, let's start to add some effects. Okay, we're going to go back to our most basic effect that we were doing the last time. I got to actually select some heads. All right, we're at Mercury Basics. We're going to grab all of them. We're going to add an effect. And we're just going to make this a position effect and just a tilt up and down, which is just a sine wave over the tilt attribute. I'm going to make this a little smaller, and so we can start to illustrate what we like to do. So the next thing we need to do is actually create what we call a size master and a speed master. Real quick before that, I don't want to lose this cue. I'm going to go ahead and drop this cue on another playback just so I have all of the bits that we just did. I'm going to go ahead and release those. What we're going to do is grab all of our heads again, hit locate, and we're going to record 2 blank stacks that just have this plain white data in them. It may seem like it doesn't do a whole lot for you, but when you start to get into the queue options, or the queue stack options, we get to start to do some really, really fun things. In the function tab, we're actually going to look over here on settings where it says queue stack is an intensity master. Now, for those who come from an ETC world, an intensity master in this instance is very, very much like an inhibitive submaster. For all intents and purposes, it is the same thing. That's not what we really want to do here. Just be aware that that's a thing. What we want is actually size master. We're going to set that to yes. And then on the next one, we're going to set speed master to yes. Notice down here on the QStack window, it changed what it says here. It's turned into SZM and SPM, which is your size master and speed master. Real quick, while I'm doing that, I want to just type in overall size and hit set so we can know that that's our size master, and overall speed, and set that there. Now, these are really, really handy. Let's go ahead and put up our fun little cue here and show you, where did it go? Bam. All right, so there we go. So we have, I'm going to drop this out for just 1 second. So grab all of our Mercury builders. We're going to put add effect, position. We're going to do this one more time just because it's good practice to always go through it. And we can see on our live laser, everything's on its nice, running on its nice effect. You'll notice when we put up the handle for each of the size and speed master, it does not automatically engage. This feature, now that I understand why they do this, so you don't accidentally screw yourself up when you accidentally bump a handle in the middle of a show, it baffled me for weeks because I couldn't get a size and speed masters to work. So what you have to do is put the handles to full and then hit the play button so it turns red and you engage it. This lets you now lets the 2 masters control what you're doing. So let's go back to the laser. Now, these 2 functions are very much how they sound. They are a size of the effects. If I start to run that down, you'll start to see that my effect gets smaller. Notice that it took a little bit of time for that to take effect. These masters, incidentally, respond to your fade time. So if you want instantaneous response, you need to set this to 0. That'll give you a nice response that responds to your actual touches rather than being on a little bit of a delay. So we'll go back to the live laser here. So that's our size master. And then we have a speed master. We can slow that whole thing down and make it really small. So this is now a really subtle small move. Okay, the music's picking up. We can groove a little farther, and a little faster, so on and so forth. Those two handles alone, account for like 85% of what I do busking wise. Now, I further divide these. Notice that I set these as overalls. What I tend to do is actually create different size masters for different attributes rather than having cues for different attributes. So, in other words, I will do a size and or speed master for just color effects and do a size and a speed master for just movement effects. What that does is lets me split up the effects a little bit so that we can have the color moving, say with the movement of the snares, but the actual movement is to the slow wave bassy music that's happening in the background, right? So that we can have multiple textures in what we're doing. Because the more texture you can layer in, even in a live setting, the cooler the show's going to look, right? So really, that's about it between those and creating a couple lovely little handles that turn things colors for us. That's most of my busking work right there until we want to get more complicated. And when we want to go get more complicated, that's when we need to start talking about how we can add more tools to our desk. Because look, we've just been goofing around here trying to set up this show file, and all of our handles are almost already full. Now, if you're on an MQ500, that's not a big deal because you have banks and banks of execute buttons, you have banks and banks of playback buttons, plus your 15 faders. And I have myself not run. Actually, that's not true. I've run out of faders once and needed to add a wing because it was a large scale show and I was controlling 4 different rooms at the same time and everybody had to have control. That was interesting and or fun. And I use and or very specifically. Um, so when we start getting into execute pages, they get really complicated in a hurry because this is a way for you to put all of your tools in one collective location to try to access them as quick as you can. Things that you can put into an execute page, you can put actual playbacks into an execute page. You can put encoders like your wheels and dials. You can put those into execute pages. You can put palettes into execute pages. And a whole host of other things, including you can do what I think is one of my favorite tools in Chamsys is create regions, which we will actually get to at a much later, not a much later, in the next webcast when I do advanced execute page stuff because there's a lot there and it really, really does deserve its entire own night. So real quick, if you want to set up, let's start with the basics on the execute page just to try to get some of our stuff where we want it. Let's come back here into MagicQ. Notice we have it says no, when I went into execute, it has no defined grid size. That's because we haven't told it anything that we want it to do, right? So we need to go ahead and set our grid size. I find 10 by 10, so 10/10. If you read, you're actually not seeing that. Hold on, there we go. Gives you 10/10, gives you a fairly comfortable workspace to work in. If you're actually on a touch screen, the buttons are about the right size for fingers to hit. If you're in an MQ500 and have both screens, a width of 16 actually is really, really comfortable and kind of maximizes your screen real estate versus how big my sausage fingers are when hitting the screen. So kind of use that at your own choice. The default, I believe, on the MQ80 consoles is 14 across, and that's important when you're trying to set up show files to be used by multiple people on multiple desks. But let's get back over here to our lovely MQ execute page. Now, so you have all of these little dots here. These are your regions that can be anything that you want them to be. So how we start to get things here is actually really easy. Let's go over into color. Let's start with color because color tends to be our most basic thing. Highlight all those color palettes that you want to bring with you, which right now is just the top 10. And we're going to hit copy, and then we're going to hit execute, and then we're going to touch where we want everything to move. Now, the beautiful part is where in the effects or in the palette windows, you kind of have to have things in order. You can then move these wherever the heck you want them, no matter what, that sort of thing. I'm going to go ahead and delete these oops, move these back to where they were because we want to do something else here real quick. All right, so we have that. And then let's talk about, we're going to grab a couple beam palettes here real quick. Copy, execute, I'm going to drop them there. And then what I'm going to do is take this entire execute region that is all of these pellets, and I'm going to hit copy, and I'm going to copy that whole thing down here again, so it creates this second copy of everything. Now what we want to do, this is a really, really handy trick, and this is how to set up regions, which is a pretty powerful tool. We're going to come over here back to our basics page, or back to our group page, and I'm going to highlight just group 1. We're going to hit copy group 1. We're going to go to our execute page, and we're going to drop it here next to our first set of palettes. Now I'm going to highlight all of these things, and then I'm going to hit set region. What that does is makes these palettes respond to whatever group is in the region. So if you can see, let's go to screen. What we can do now is, this is just our builder 1s. And if I do this, we'll do builder 2, copy, execute, boom, oops. Sorry about that. And let's back that up. Try copy 2, execute. We'll drop it in here, highlight everything, and hit set region. Now, all of our builder 2s respond to just this, and then builder 1s are all independent. So handy little trick. This is a good way if you're moving on the fly and want to take multiple elements and get them just doing one thing at a time. Really handy way to do that. It also works with then the beam palettes, if you can see down in capture there. And that's about it. We'll also, just for convenience sake, because we want to be able to grab all these things in a hurry, let's copy our groups over there. We'll copy all of the groups independently, so that we can grab individual groups, because if we do something fun like this, grab this, copy. Now, whatever groups we grab, we can also control them and do multiple groups at the same time, like such. What you can also then, if you want to start to expand your execute page, so you can start to drop effects in here. You can start to drop playbacks. You can actually change what this execute page looks like. You can put a background up of your own image. One thing that I have done is actually take a copy of the plot in JPEG, drop that as your background image, and then arrange your groups and everything so it's kind of around the pictures of where the lights are, so it gives you a visual graphical interpretation of what's going on. And you can put all sorts of other tools there, including time code clocks. If you want to put, there's media functions that you can put there, pauses and playbacks and that sort of thing. And that's about it. Honestly, folks, I actually kind of went through my material that I wanted to go for this evening, which was kind of keeping it simple, because I definitely do want to do an execute page all on in one evening, so we can do something more advanced, so you can see some of the deeper execute programming. Because once we start getting into my show file that I use for busking lasers out in the real world, you'll start to see the power of what some of these tools do to be able to have all of these things at your fingertips. Unfortunately, it takes a little more setup time than I want to waste your time while you sit here listening to me to click buttons. It's not fun for anybody. So with that being said, I think it's actually time to jump into a little bit of playtime. I'm just going to throw a couple of effects, maybe throw a little bit of music on, and I want to say thanks for joining us this evening, everybody. I truly enjoyed it. Hope you learned something, and we will have Busking Part 2 next week on Thursday evening at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thanks, folks.
feet on the land and sea. Gabriel, don't you blow your trumpet till you hear from me. And your grave can hold my body down. There ain't no grave can hold my body down. Jesus, meet me in the middle of the air. If these wings don't fail me, I will meet you anywhere. Hey.